thought I had faith. I prayed before meals. I reposted scriptures online. I listened to sermons while driving to work. I told people God had carried me through every dark season of my life. And maybe He did. But the truth I refused to face was this. I only trusted God when life stayed comfortable. The second things stopped going my way, my faith started cracking underneath the surface. Quietly, slowly, like concrete splitting during winter. I didn't notice it at first, but heaven did. I remember sitting alone in my apartment after midnight, still wearing my work clothes, staring at overdue bills spread across the kitchen table. My jaw was tight from stress. My phone sat beside me, filled with ignored calls and messages from people I knew I needed to cut out of my life. I looked toward the ceiling and whispered, "God, where are you?" And the silence that followed felt suffocating. Because deep down, I already knew the answer. I wanted God to save me without changing me. I wanted peace without discipline. I wanted blessings without surrender. I wanted God to remove consequences while I kept feeding the habits destroying my life behind closed doors. That's when James 4:3 started haunting me. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly to spend it on your passions. James 4:3. That verse felt personal. Like God had reached directly into my chest and exposed everything I spent years hiding behind fake spirituality. Because suddenly, every prayer I had ever prayed sounded different in my head. Every emotional moment, every desperate request. Every time I demanded God fix my life while I secretly protected my pride, my anger, my addictions, my ego, and the relationships pulling me further from Him. I realized my faith had conditions. I trusted God, as long as He gave me what I wanted. I obeyed Him, as long as obedience stayed convenient. I followed Him, until sacrifice became painful. And when heaven stayed silent, I started acting like God had betrayed me. But God was not betraying me. He was exposing me. Exposing the version of faith I had built around comfort instead of transformation. That realization broke something inside me. For weeks, I stopped pretending, stopped performing holiness for people, stopped posting motivational scriptures while living spiritually empty behind the scenes. Some nights, I sat in complete darkness in my living room, exhausted from fighting myself, because for the first time in my life, I understood something terrifying. You can say you love God and still worship yourself. And the hardest part of redemption is not losing sinful habits. It is losing the version of yourself that feels safest inside them. At first, I kept relapsing into old patterns, returning to conversations God told me to leave behind, falling back into anger, into pride, into distractions that numbed conviction for a few temporary hours. But slowly, something inside me started changing. Not overnight, not dramatically, quietly, like sunlight breaking through a storm, one small crack at a time. I started praying differently, less demanding, more honest. I stopped asking God to protect my comfort and started asking Him to destroy whatever was poisoning my soul. And destruction hurts, especially when God answers that prayer. This is God's grace. Stories of redemption. And maybe the reason heaven feels silent in your life is not because God abandoned you. Maybe it is because He refuses to bless the version of you that is destroying yourself.
If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you that grace is still writing chapters you haven't seen yet, don't keep that hope to yourself. There is someone in your life who needs to hear this tonight. Share this message with them. Take a moment to like this video so more hearts searching for redemption can find it. And subscribe to God's Grace, stories of redemption, so you never miss the next story God is unfolding. Because Scripture reminds us, because of the Lord's great love we are not consumed, for His mercies never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Lamentations 3:22-23. That means no story is finished, no failure is final, no night is permanent. And the next testimony, the next breakthrough, the next story of redemption may be closer than you think. Stay tuned, stay expectant. And remember, grace is still at work. We'll see you in the next story.
The night everything changed, I was sitting on the floor of my bathroom, staring at my reflection, like I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me anymore. My makeup was smeared from crying. My phone kept vibrating beside the sink with messages from people God had already warned me about months ago. But loneliness is dangerous when your soul is starving, because eventually you stop asking whether something is destroying you, and you start asking whether surviving alone feels worse. That was the real battle. Not demons, not people, me. I knew how to post scriptures online while privately drowning in anxiety. I knew how to smile in public while silently fighting addictions nobody around me knew existed. I knew how to worship in church and still go home feeling hollow. Every night felt like I was fighting a version of myself that refused to die. And eventually, I got tired of promising God I would change and waking up the next morning feeding the same habits again. Tired of crying during prayer and then running back to the same emotional chaos that kept breaking me. Tired of calling it spiritual warfare when half the time I was the one opening the door. That's when 2 Timothy 1:7 started following me everywhere. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. 2 Timothy 1:7. That verse did not comfort me at first. It exposed me, because I realized I had been living like fear owned me. Fear of being alone, fear of disappointing people, fear of walking away from relationships that were poisoning my spirit, fear of becoming someone different, fear of surrendering completely to God, because deep down, I still wanted control. And the scariest part was realizing how normal my dysfunction had become. I had learned how to survive broken. I had learned how to function exhausted. I had learned how to keep losing to myself while pretending everything was fine. But one night, something inside me snapped. Not dramatically, quietly, like a prisoner finally realizing the cage door was never locked. I remember standing in my kitchen after midnight with tears running down my face while the entire apartment sat silent around me. And for the first time in my life, I stopped blaming everybody else for the condition of my soul. I drew a line, not against people, against myself. Against the version of me that kept choosing destruction while begging God for peace. And slowly, things started changing. Not overnight, not perfectly. There were relapses, weak moments, nights I wanted to run back to old comforts. But every time temptation came back knocking, something inside me kept whispering, "You already know where that road ends." And little by little, God started rebuilding the woman I thought was too damaged to save. That is why you are listening to God's Grace, Stories of Redemption. Because some of us did not need more motivation. We needed surrender. And sometimes redemption begins the moment you finally get tired of losing to yourself.
If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you that grace is still writing chapters you haven't seen yet, don't keep that hope to yourself. There is someone in your life who needs to hear this tonight. Share this message with them. Take a moment to like this video so more hearts searching for redemption can find it. And subscribe to God's Grace, Stories of Redemption, so you never miss the next story God is unfolding. Because Scripture reminds us, because of the Lord's great love we are not consumed, for His mercies never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Lamentations 3:22-23. That means no story is finished, No failure is final. No night is permanent. And the next testimony, the next breakthrough, the next story of redemption may be closer than you think. Stay tuned, stay expectant. And remember, grace is still at work. We'll see you in the next story.
I used to believe that if I could just hold everything together, I wouldn't fall apart. As a woman, I carried things quietly, the kind of weight that doesn't always get seen. Showing up, holding things down, making sure everyone else was okay while something inside me slowly unraveled. My mind never rested. It ran ahead of me constantly, rehearsing conversations, imagining outcomes, preparing for things that hadn't even happened yet. I told myself it was wisdom. I told myself it was strength. But it wasn't. It was anxiety, and it was exhausting. There were moments it became impossible to hide. Sitting alone in the car after a long day, hands still wrapped around the steering wheel, trying to steady my breathing before walking back inside and being everything everyone needed me to be. Standing in the kitchen late at night, the house finally quiet, staring at the counter, replaying everything I said, everything I should have said, everything that could go wrong next, carrying emotional weight no one else could see, still showing up with a soft voice and a steady face. I smiled when I needed to, kept going when I had to, but inside I was overwhelmed. The more I tried to control everything, the more I felt like I was losing control of myself. I kept telling myself to be strong, to push through, to figure it out. But strength started to look like burnout, and one night it broke me. Nothing dramatic happened. No crisis, no bad news, just silence. And in that silence, everything I had been holding in rose to the surface all at once. My thoughts raced faster than I could keep up. My chest felt tight. I couldn't calm myself down, no matter how hard I tried. And for the first time, I admitted something I had been avoiding for a long time. I was not in control. Not of my future, not of my thoughts, not even of the fear that kept showing up uninvited. That realization should have terrified me, but it didn't. It humbled me. So I stopped trying to sound strong. I stopped trying to fix everything in my own strength. I whispered quietly, almost afraid to say it out loud, "God, I can't carry this anymore. I don't know how to quiet my mind. I don't know how to fix what's happening inside me. I need you." Nothing around me changed. The room stayed the same. The night stayed still, but something inside me began to shift. As a woman, I had spent so long trying to hold everything together that I didn't even recognize what peace felt like anymore. It didn't come all at once. It wasn't loud or overwhelming. It was quiet, gentle, almost like a weight slowly lifting instead of being taken all at once. The thoughts didn't completely disappear, but they softened. The pressure in my chest began to ease, and for the first time in a long time, I felt space where there had only been noise. I started to realize that peace wasn't something I could force. It wasn't something I could create by thinking harder or trying harder. It came from surrender, from letting go of the need to control everything and trusting God with what I could not carry. The more I turned my focus toward Him, the quieter everything else became. Not because life suddenly became easy, but because I wasn't carrying it alone anymore. There were still moments when anxiety tried to return, and sometimes it did. There were days I slipped back into overthinking, moments where I tried to take control again, trying to fix everything on my own. But now it was different. I didn't stay there. I didn't get stuck. I knew where to go. I returned to God again and again, and each time I did, that same quiet peace met me there. Isaiah 26:3 says, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are stayed on you, because they trust in you." I had heard those words before, but now I understood them in a way I never had. Peace wasn't the absence of problems. It was the presence of God in the middle of them. God didn't remove every uncertainty in my life. He didn't hand me control over everything I feared. What He gave me was something deeper, a stillness, a quiet strength, a peace that remained even when things around me felt uncertain. I stopped trying to control everything, and that's when God quieted my anxious heart.